Well, I want to welcome all of our churches joining us today in our city, across the country, around the world. Today, part two of our series, Fatal Distractions, part two of two, I should say, of Fatal Distractions. Before we get to that, though, I want to do something just for fun. I want everybody to pull out your phone. In every room or wherever you are, you can participate in this. I want you to pull out your phone real quick. I'm not going to ask you to scan a QR code, I promise. I just want you to pull out your phone quick. I want to take a quick poll. It's sort of a quick experiment, if you will. And here's what I want you to do. I have an iPhone, so I don't know if you have an Android or a different type of phone. I don't know how this works, but what I want you to do on your phone is, if you're on an iPhone, you swipe up and hold, and then you see all your apps are open. I want you to, one by one, close all the apps that are open on your phone. And I want you to count as you're closing them, okay? So I want you to do this real quick. Go ahead and do it right now. As you close each app, I want you to count. Now, some of you are already putting your phones away, so you don't have many open, but I see some of you still scrolling. You're still swiping apps. I'm gonna wait, because I know that there's a few of you who I still see heads down in the room that I'm in. I'm gonna wait, because I'm sure in other rooms, at other campuses, other locations, some of you may be at home. Hopefully you're not doing this in your car, by the way, unless you're a passenger. Keep swiping. Okay, real quick, just by poll, and I want everybody to participate in this so the people around you can see the delinquents in the room, okay? This is important. We're not really about shame, we're just about being real around here, authenticity. How many of you had less than 5 apps open on your phone? Real quick, look at all these holy, righteous people. Okay, how about people over 5 apps? Over 5 apps open on your phone? Okay, keep your hand up if you're over 10. Over 10, all locations, don't put your hands down. If you're over 10 apps, over 15, over 20, 30, I gotta up, I can't go by 5s. 40, 50, 60. I don't know if there's people with hands up at other locations, but we still got a bunch in here. 70, 80. I still see a couple, 80, 90. 100 apps, 100, okay, I'm gonna stop right there. Here's the competition. If you have over 100, message me on social media. I have a free book I wanna send you about being undistracted. Today, we're concluding this series, and I want you to know, particularly the people who have over 100 apps open on their phone, actually having all those apps open on your phone won't actually hurt your phone in any way, but it does result in poor performance, and your battery will drain faster. Some of you know that. But here's why I bring that up, and here's why this is an interesting experiment, is because the same is true for you. The same is true for you when you have a lot of distractions, when there's a lot of different things on your plate, and you know this, there's a lot of pseudo apps open in your life, you become distracted, and it actually leads to poor performance, and it drains your best efforts and your best energies towards the things you really intended on pouring your life and pouring your focus into. And when we operate our lives the way some of us operate our phones, we suffer from something, as we talked about this last week, known as continuous partial attention, which this has become an epidemic in our culture. We're focused on too many things that require our cognitive ability at one time, which, as we said last week, leads to a loss of focus. And because we're not focused on any one thing, even though we may have clarity, you may have a vision for what you want to accomplish in your life or what you want to accomplish in your business, clarity about what you're hoping for or dreaming for or what you're living or aiming your life toward. But when you are suffering from continuous partial attention because there's so many things that are distracting you, this loss of focus is really a lack of vision. And again, you may have a clear vision for what you're hoping for your kids and for your marriage, but when you're so distracted, your lack of vision comes from your loss of focus. And when vision is lost, we know from the scriptures, things die, relationships deteriorate, dreams are snuffed out, organizations break down. Some of you have been a part of this, you've experienced this. Some of us are in the middle of this now. Last week we talked about the fact that distraction comes from 2 Latin words, dis meaning apart and trahere meaning to drag or to draw. So the word literally means to drag or to draw apart, and what's being dragged or drawn apart is our attention. And our divided attention, it undermines our best intention. That's what we said last week. Our divided attention undermines our best intention or intentions. And ultimately, what happens is we lose traction. We stop moving toward the things, the most important things, the ultimate things in our lives, which is actually, ironically, embedded in the English word distraction. This distraction or a loss of traction, a lack of progress, a lack of productivity. And so last week, we jumped into this story of Nehemiah, who struggled with lots of distractions, and he had to resist distractions. We're going to jump back in the story. I told you last week, we talked on a macro level about Nehemiah's extraordinary ability to focus on the vision that was in front of him and building this wall. And today, I want to unpack a series of distractions that Nehemiah faced. Nehemiah, if you weren't here last week, was a Jewish exile. He was living in Persia. He was serving the King Cyrus, that was the king of Persia, as his cupbearer, so he had a prestigious role in the kingdom. When this report came back, several of his people, after King Cyrus had taken over the Babylonians, several of the Jewish people had gone back to Jerusalem after being carried off into exile, and he gets this report. The report is things are not going well for those who return to the province of Judah. And they're in great trouble and disgrace. And the wall of Jerusalem had been torn down and the gates had been destroyed by fire. And Nehemiah was deeply troubled. If you remember, he was so troubled the king saw this. And the king has no interest in necessarily rebuilding the nation of Israel, but he cares about Nehemiah. And Nehemiah had earned influence with the king. When the king saw how distraught he was, he inquired, and then he wanted to help Nehemiah. And this was the beginning of what we talked about this last week, what a guy named David Brooks calls a terrifying longing. I introduced this idea last week. A terrifying longing is basically like a holy discontent, or a burden that you have in life. And so Nehemiah has this terrifying longing. He sets his sight on rebuilding the walls because he believes to rebuild the walls is actually what's going to fortify the city and cause the people and the whole nation to be restored, which is ultimately his goal. And despite all the significant distractions, as we said last week, Nehemiah's terrifying longing, this thing that was inside of him, this thing that continued to bother him. And some of you have this. There's things you see in life. There's things you see in society, things you see in culture that you know aren't right. They shouldn't be. And it could be different, and it bothers you. And Nehemiah had this terrifying longing that bothered him. And it was the essential fuel source for empowering his vision and sustaining his focus on what he was trying to accomplish. Now, the other thing last week we talked about was that a terrifying longing is really the combination of three things. And I'm actually moving them in the circles today, so hopefully that won't bother you. Some of you are gonna be like, wait, you put that in a different circle last week. But there were three things: possibility, problem, and passion. And one of the things we said last week is that at the intersection of these three things, this is an important concept. This is gonna connect to the distractions that we're gonna look at today. But at the intersection of these three things is where the beginning of a terrifying longing is. It's also the thing that fuels vision. So the center of these things, where there's a problem that needs to be solved and there's possibility of what could be. The problem is what is, the possibility is what could be, and the passion is what should be. This is what fuels a terrifying longing, and it ultimately leads to vision. And for Nehemiah, it was the vision to rebuild the wall. And Nehemiah was focused on trying to accomplish this thing that he eventually believed would restore the nation of Israel. Well, when Nehemiah's longing and his vision were sort of solidified, we saw that it sustained his vision. But the reality is there's a lot we can learn from how he dealt with the distractions that he faced. In fact, he faced at least three unique types of distractions that I want to look at this morning real quick because they're common to us. They're things that I think you can relate to. So I want to jump back into the story where we left off. If you remember, his enemies were inviting him to a meeting, and Nehemiah has this great statement where he said, "I'm doing a great work and I can't come down. I'm doing a great work and I can't come down." In fact, 4 different times the invitation came to Nehemiah, just come meet with us, just come talk with us. And 4 different times Nehemiah responded saying, no, I can't. I'm doing a great work and I can't come down. Furthermore, he said, why? Why should I stop working to come meet with you? You're not going in the same direction as me. You don't have the same goals as me. You don't have the same intentions as me. In fact, your intentions are to harm me, and your intentions are to keep the nation of Israel from being restored. Why would I come meet with you? I mean, that's just a distraction. But they went further. Next came an attempt to blackmail Nehemiah. They threatened to inform King Cyrus, who actually helped to resource and support Nehemiah going back to rebuild the walls, the king that he had earned the trust of, that he was the cupbearer for. They threatened to inform him that Nehemiah's real intentions were to rebel and to rebel against his empire. And Nehemiah replied to them, he said, look, there's no truth in any part of your story. You're making the whole thing up, and you'll be found out. And Nehemiah goes on to say that they were just trying to intimidate us and imagining that what they could do is discourage us and stop the work. Nehemiah said, in spite of all that, I continued the work with even greater determination. It was clear to me that somebody or somebodies were threatened by what I was trying to do, but it made me realize that what I was trying to do was all the more important. And so with even greater determination, I focused on what I was doing. And when they realized that all of their schemes didn't work, they really crossed the line. They bribed one of the prophets, which, by the way, I said this last week, and I really mean it. This is a fascinating story. I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version, but you should go read this. The book of Nehemiah is a fascinating story to learn from. And they went and bribed one of the prophets, one of the prophets of the nation, the prophets of God. And they bribed this prophet to bring Nehemiah, to meet Nehemiah in the temple so that they could take him out when he least suspected it. And somebody informed Nehemiah, and Nehemiah, he was able to thwart their plan, and he didn't get stuck there. But here's the thing, this is why I bring this up. It was over and over and over. There was something in the way. There was this onslaught. There was all these distractions. It seemed like at every turn, Nehemiah's trying to focus on the great work that's right in front of him. And thing after thing after thing. Here's my question. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like, hey, I'm really trying to focus on this thing. I'm really trying to focus on this great work that's right in front of me, or the thing that's most important. And no matter how hard you tried to avoid the distraction, thing after thing, sometimes random, bizarre things continue to get in the way. And they continue to surface. In fact, that's because the first type of distraction that I want to talk about today, the first type of distraction is fogs. Now, a fog is something that clouds your view. When you think about this, all of us you've driven in a fog. You've seen a fog where it's like, you're heading down the road and maybe it's early in the morning and you head into a certain area, and as you're driving on the road, you realize like you can only see so far in advance. In fact, it's like the road disappears and you can't see far into the future, and it's sort of like you can't see where you're trying to head to. And this is how distractions work in our lives. So many of those things come up that we lose touch with what we were trying to do in the beginning. As a matter of fact, we lose touch, most importantly, we lose touch with the problem that we were trying to solve in the first place. The terrifying longing that caused us to focus on what we were doing, to make our intentions, to give our best time and effort and energy to something, whether that's caring for your family or building your business or investing in the lives of the next generation, whatever it is. And these are the most common types of distractions. They come all from all different directions in our life. These are the urgent yet unimportant things in life. This is the squeaky wheel or the screaming babies. Use your whatever metaphor you want. That's what this is. And fog can be generated by critics. It can be by your competitors. It can even be by people that are posing as your friends. And they oftentimes leverage things like our past regrets or disappointments or other people's priorities. All of these things can become a fog of distraction. In fact, you know this, most other people have an agenda for how you would use your time, how you would spend your energy. They have a plan for you, but usually their plan is to help them with what they're trying to accomplish. And there's no shortage of these distractions. And whatever it is, I don't want you to miss this. It seems benign. It seems like, we'll get through this. But these fogs are really an enemy to your great work. They're gonna slow down your great work. They're gonna cause you to come down. They're gonna cause you to miss out on and lose time that's difficult to make up for. And like Nehemiah said, like, why? Why would you stop this great work for these things that are just a fog of distraction? Earlier last year, I was speaking at an event, and some of you know Bob Goff. He was also speaking at the same event. I ended up sitting at a table with Bob Goff, and I was asking, he just had a brand new book come out called Undistracted, which was part of the inspiration of this series. He had a book come out called Undistracted. I hadn't read it yet, but he gave me a copy of it, and I was like, I need to read this. Like, I'm in the middle of a distraction right now, and if you know anything about Bob, he's like super present, super interested. He goes, tell me about it. I'm like right now, like you're getting ready to go speak, we're having dinner, like, are you sure right now? He's like, yeah, tell me about it. And so I started telling him about this thing that's going on. I've got this debate I'm having, this conflict with somebody who doesn't believe in what we're doing. And so anyway, we're having this discussion. I told him it got so bad in our family. We have a no tech policy at dinner, by the way. This is parenthetical. We at the dinner table, nobody's allowed to bring technology. No phones, no iPads. We have dinner. We have family dinner together. And this one night after dinner, my phone had been in my back pocket. And I'd been thinking about this thing, and I'd read a message from this. It's bizarre. We're messaging all through social media. We've got each other's phone numbers, which is strange, but we're messaging through social media. And I went and I just thought, I need to respond to that message. So I pulled it out. I'm underneath the table. And I'm messaging. Yeah, I know. And I'm the preacher. And so I'm messaging underneath the table. And my wife, all she says is, you responding to him again? And that was the moment I knew, and I was telling Bob, that was the moment I knew that this is so distracting me. I can't stay focused on what I need to be doing because this cloud, this fog is in front of me, and it's just like, it's all I can see, and I need to keep responding. So Bob, being Bob, he's about to give a message about something totally different. He's like, listen, let me tell you a story, which is awesome. Bob goes, when I used to practice law, he's like, I'm still a lawyer, but I used to practice law on a regular basis, and I would get juries, and there was a whole pool of people. Some of you have done this. You go for jury duty. I got a pool of people for jury duty, and I start interviewing the people one at a time. And he said, for me, well, the thing I was trying to do is I wanted to make sure that this person was interested in getting to the truth. That's the goal. The goal of the trial is to surface the truth. And if I thought this person had any other agenda, then that was the goal. That was the main purpose. That was sort of the vision for trial, was to surface the truth. And if I thought this person had any other agenda or was, in any way going to be a distraction to the case and to the trial, he said, I would just, after questioning them, I would thank them. I'd say, hey, thank you. You're dismissed. And he said, that's what you need to do with this person in your life. I'm sure they're a great person, like a lot of the people that came to my trials that I interviewed. But that person, they've created a fog for you that needs to be dismissed from your life. He said, look, I'm convinced. I'll never forget this. He said, I'm convinced it's much easier for the enemy to keep us distracted than it is to take us out. Now, I don't know where you are in your faith journey, but whether you believe there's an enemy out there, Jesus said, the enemy's come to steal and kill and destroy. I've come that you might have life and have it to the full. I believe that Jesus, the way of Jesus, following Jesus, leads towards life at the full. But even if you're not there yet, here's what you need to know. Oftentimes, there's clouds that are, what they are is they're an enemy to your vision. They're an enemy to the great work. They're the enemy to the best and highest use of your time. And when there's fog, you have to clear it out. This fog has to be cleared out of your life. And there's many different ways to do that. For some of you like me, you need to unfollow somebody or unfriend somebody. You need to start ignoring the critics or distancing yourself from a certain person in your life. Some of you just need to get off social media altogether for a season. You need to stop driving that way to work. You need to stop going to those places after work. You need to stop opening those apps on your phone, because the reality is there are things that are a fog to your vision and to the great work that's in front of you. And the truth is often the best thing for you to do is to trust the direction. You were headed in a direction. You had a vision that was connected to your terrifying longing. You were heading that direction. And while you can't see any longer the destination of where you're headed because of the fog, the best thing to do is to like you do in your car, to turn off the high beams and to focus on what's right in front of you. What's God placed right in your hands? And take the next right step in that direction. And don't get hung up in all of what's happening around here, because for a season, until you get through that fog, you're gonna get off course if you don't keep heading in the direction that you intended to head in the very first place, because the fog, it will get you off course. Distraction number 2, in the middle of the project, back to the story of Nehemiah, in the middle of the project, something strange happens. There's a large, diverse group of people that are working together, and some of the men and their wives raised a cry of protest. So this is the people on the inside. They're working on the wall. They're working with Nehemiah, and they raised a cry of protest against their fellow Jews, other people that they were working next to. And they were saying, we have such large families. We need more food to survive, which doesn't seem like that big a deal. In fact, it seems like, hey, just create some programs and provide some food for some people in need. But it's worse than that. Others said, we've mortgaged our fields and vineyards and homes to get food during the famine. And still others said, we've had to borrow money on our fields and vineyards to pay our taxes. And we belong to the same family as those who are other wealthy Jewish people. And our children are just like theirs. Yet we must sell our children into slavery just to get enough money to live. Which it's like, this has escalated quickly. I mean, there's a fire that's going on here, but this has escalated really, really fast. This isn't just a small complaint, and this kind of puts everything at risk. In fact, their complaints were valid, and Nehemiah knew that if this continued, that their entire collective endeavor, the goal of restoring the whole nation by rebuilding the wall, this would be at risk. So Nehemiah said this. He said, then I called a public meeting to deal with the problem. And at the meeting, I said to them, look, we're doing all we can to redeem our Jewish relatives. What we're trying to do is pull people out of disgrace and out of the disorder and out of the disarray that we've been in. We're trying to redeem our Jewish relatives who have had to sell themselves to pagan foreigners. Like some of you who are wealthy, you didn't have to do this, but others of your Jewish brothers and sisters, the reality is they've had to sell themselves to these people outside, the people that we're trying to keep out by rebuilding the walls. But you are selling them back into slavery again, to you, inside the walls. How often must we redeem them? And they had nothing to say in their defense. See, the second type of distraction that we often experience in our life is fires. The truth is while fog clouds our vision, the truth is fires actually threaten the vision. They threaten the vision of what could be. You have a dream of what could be, and when a fire starts, when there's something that threatens the vision, this is something you have to put out. You can't just ignore it and keep going like we often do. We try to treat it like a fog, and it's like, we'll get through this. But if this goes unattended, a fire, as you know, it can be incredibly destructive. And it's a threat to the entire enterprise. And this is what Nehemiah was in the middle of. And the truth is oftentimes when they're small, it's like, oh, that's just a campfire. We can contain that. And that's what we try to do. But that's a mistake, because the truth is what's at risk and what is threatened is the possibility of the overall vision, the thing that you dreamed could be. Fires have the ability to absolutely consume that and make what was once possible impossible. And while this was sort of an internal dispute that didn't really pose a direct threat to completing the wall, the completion of the wall was a means to an end. If you remember, for Nehemiah, it was the restoration of the people of Israel, the people of God who were to be set apart, who were to thrive so that as people would see the people of God, it's no different than our world today, as they would see the people of God thriving, that they would be pointed to the God that ultimately would not just be for the nation of Israel, but would be the God that opened up the gospel and opened up his grace to the entire world. The truth is the walls would keep the foreigners out. They keep the foreigners from preying on the Israelites. But if you think about it, it's all for nothing if they're gonna enslave each other inside the walls. The people aren't going to be restored. They're not going to be rescued. They're not going to be redeemed. And we often try to press on through fires, and some of you know this. You've experienced this in life, and you know there's a fire, and you don't want to look at it. You just want to keep going. You want to treat it like the fog, and you want to stay locked into your vision, and you just want to keep going. But here's the thing is that campfire can turn into a bonfire and eventually become a wildfire, and it can destroy things. But you're going, but I don't want to stop. I just want to keep progress. And sometimes we're just like, I don't want to deal with that. And maybe somebody else will deal with that. Or we just close our eyes to it and we think, maybe it'll just go away. But it doesn't. And eventually, those little fires, they add up and they have longer term and greater consequences. Some of you know that just across from where we are here in Georgia, just across into Alabama, there's a Mercedes plant. That builds vehicles, Mercedes, mostly SUVs. And it's fascinating that along this massive, I think there's 1,650 stations on this assembly line. And all along the assembly line, there's like a clothesline looking thing. It's a rope that goes all along the assembly line. And the idea is, if there's a problem at anywhere along the way, there's people watching for quality control, there's people that are working, and if somebody notices a problem, if there's something off, they want you to pull the line, and it stops the entire operation from the beginning to the end. It's like pulling the ripcord. It's like everything stops at that moment when you pull that cord. And there was a plant manager was being interviewed about how much this must hurt progress. It's like, how often does this happen? And like, how do you even get anything done with that many people who have access to stop the entire operation by pulling the line? And this is what the plant manager said. He said, it's actually really hard to get people to pull the line. Nobody wants to be the responsible party for stopping all of the progress. And so often people just let things go because they want progress to keep happening. The truth is some of you, there's a fire that's threatening your vision. There's a fire that's threatening what you're wanting to accomplish, what you're wanting to establish in your family or in your career, the direction that you're headed in, or the impact that you want to make in the world. For some of you, the impact you want to make in specific people's lives. And if you don't stop, and this is what has to happen with fires, you have to stop and put it out. If you don't stop, it will stop progress for a few minutes. And this is one you can't treat like fog. If you don't stop and put it out, your entire vision, your entire goal could be consumed. When it's small, it's not that big a deal. But that's when you want to stop and pull out the fire extinguisher, which, if you've ever used one, it's incredibly messy. It's not easy. This is why we don't do it. It's why we close our eyes. This is why we try to just press through, pass on because of fires, because stopping and dealing with things like that in our lives, dealing with significant conflict that could turn things in your organization or in your family into disarray, we just rather sort of close our eyes and turn a blind eye to it. But the truth is pulling out the extinguisher while it's messy, it's not nearly as destructive as when that fire grows and it's left unattended. See, what you are doing is not right, is what Nehemiah said to these people. He paused, he said, look, what you're doing is not right. I can't let this go on any further. In fact, he said, and I'm culpable. I'm going to take my responsibility. I myself, as well as my brothers and my workers, have been lending the people money and grain. But now, let us stop this business of charging interest. I know that's how you make money. I know that's how you get ahead, but that's not part of the ultimate vision of restoring the nation. You must now restore their fields, these people that you've taken from, and their vineyards and their olive groves and their homes to them this very day, and repay the interest you charged when you lent them the money, the grain, the new wine, and the olive oil. And after Nehemiah laid out the plan, he confronted the problem, he put the extinguisher on the fire. The fire was out. Everyone agreed. The fire was extinguished and the work continued. You have to pause sometimes to put out the fires that are involved in your life. And some of you know this. You're dealing with fires with relatives, with that one employee that's popular but destructive, with somebody that's in your kid's friend group, and it seems messy, but you have to stop and put out the fire, or the whole goal, the whole vision, your intention becomes at risk. Finally, there was a third distraction that Nehemiah dealt with. And while Nehemiah wasn't distracted by the threats from the outside, clearly people inside were. They made plans. People were saying they made plans to come and fight against Jerusalem and throw us into confusion, as Nehemiah is telling the story. And then the people of Judah began to complain. The workers are getting tired. Now look at this. There was all these threats from the outside, but they're saying the workers are getting tired and there's so much rubble to be moved. We will never be able to build the walls by ourselves, which to me, I go, that seems from left field. There hasn't been a problem at this point. They're making massive progress. There's lots of hands. There's lots of people involved. And if you read the story, you'll see that they're working on many different parts of the walls and the gates in different places at the same time. But coincidentally, along with the threats, this complaining about the work being hard and us not being able to accomplish it, it surfaces at the same time. And then Nehemiah tells us, meanwhile, as these people are talking, which is sort of a parenthetical addition, like, and another thing, Nehemiah says, these people said, hey, look, yeah, we're getting tired and the work is heavy, but also you need to know what's happening is our enemies are saying, before they know what's happening, we'll swoop down on them and we'll kill them and we'll end their work. And the Jews who live near the enemy, these are people who live near the walls, outside the walls, they live near the enemy. They told us again and again, these people will come from all directions and they'll attack us. And it's sort of like, oh, okay. Now I see what's going on. Now I get the picture at the beginning. It wasn't really what was going on. You've experienced this before. Like your kids, or you have an employee, or you have somebody that comes to you and they don't want to do something, or they don't want to participate in something, or they don't want to go somewhere, and they make up in some other excuse first, but it's not the real reason. Like you think, wait, this is not about that. It's about something else, and you don't exactly know what it is. But Nehemiah sat and as he listened, and they continued to talk, he realized that there was something beneath that. And the truth is there was a fear. There was a fear on the inside. There was a fear that was deep down inside for these people, and this fear was causing them to want to quit. And that's because our fear has to do with our passion. And our fears oftentimes, when we deal with this, while a fog clouds our vision, and a fire, it has something that threatens the overall vision. Fear paralyzes our will. And in fact, fear in this case, for these people, fear of, and I've never done this at church before, so we're gonna see how this works out, but fear of losing their lives, fear, grave danger for them. The reality is this was gripping these people, and they wanted to quit because they thought, I don't even know if this is worth it. I don't know if what we're doing will be accomplished, if we'll eventually make it to the other side, because our enemies, they're threatening us from all sides. And Nehemiah, he had dealt with this before, but the people in the nation and people that are a part of your enterprise, people that are a part of what you're involved in, people that are a part of your vision, that are participating in it. Again, whether this is family or whether this is organizationally, they often don't deal with fears the same way you do. And fear can manifest itself in our lives in so many different ways. It can be mild insecurities, or it can be major anxieties. We all suffer from fear of different things to different degrees. Some of us fear of failure, or fear of rejection, or fear of not being enough, fear of missing out, or fear of stepping out, fear of being left out, fear of being found out or being singled out. And all these have the potential to paralyze us from the passion. They paralyze our will from the passion that we had when we first set out to accomplish what we did. And ultimately, it keeps us from what Jesus came to promise us, is experiencing life to the full. And you're not experiencing life to the full because in some ways, and I'll just tell you this is probably for another day, this is a bigger message, but in our culture, we've bought a huge lie. And the huge lie is that in our modern culture is that the way to make people feel secure, to keep people from being insecure, is the way to protect them is to protect them from the things that they fear or to keep them from the things they fear. But this is exactly wrong. Do you know this? Like, this is a big deal. Like, we've bought this, and this is sort of, in general, we go, well, no, we got to protect people. We've got to protect people from these things that they're afraid of, and we got to isolate them. But here's the thing you need to know. This is what leads to things like, we don't keep score. I mean, the things we make fun of, right? Like everybody gets a trophy. Like, we lower academic standards so nobody feels bad about themselves. And what we do is to protect people, we lie to them. And they live in unreality. That's what happens, is we try to distance them from the things that they fear so that they don't have to deal with it. And they end up living in unreality. And you need to know this, all competent clinical psychologists, they propose just the opposite. Did you know that this is what most psychologists do? Most great counselors, they try, and through voluntary exposure, they try to expose people to the things that they fear in palatable doses. When in increasingly palatable doses, because that's the key in most cases to overcoming the things that we fear. And not only that, it increases resiliency, which we're such a fragile society. You know this, like we're so fragile because we distance ourselves. We close ourselves off. We talked about this before. We cancel people that disagree with us. We cancel people we think are attacking us because we're fragile and we're fearful. We're not willing to confront the things that we're fearful of. So Nehemiah, he knows this is what's going on with these people. So look what he does. He called together all the nobles and the rest of the people, and he said to them, don't be afraid of the enemy. Which is like, okay, that's done, that's it. Is that all we gotta do, right? It's like, hey, just don't be afraid. Like, if that worked, that's what we would all do, but we know that doesn't work. Nehemiah goes on, he says, look, don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord. Remember who's with you. And the Lord who's great and glorious. And look, fight for your brothers and your sons and your daughters and your wives and your homes. First, he says, remember who's with us. Regain a healthy fear of the Lord who's promised us. He's promised us to prosper in this nation, that through our nation, he's gonna deliver the entire world. God's made promise to us. You need to have a healthy fear of the Lord in the midst of the fear of our enemies. And not only that, look, don't lose sight. This passion inside of you that ultimately that was leading us to fight for and build for our brothers and our sons and our daughters and our wives and our homes and our society and our community. Don't lose sight of that. This is your passion of what should be and what could be. And some of you know this. When you lose your why, this is your why. What you're fighting for is your why. When you lose your why, you always lose your way. 10 years ago, I reluctantly took on an assignment, and it was a really difficult, major leadership challenge in my life. And honestly, I'd never been a part of a turnaround before in my life, and I went into this, sort of fearful, but knowing this is what we were super clear. This is exactly what God wanted us to do. Well, a year and a half in, we stopped the bleeding. We hadn't yet turned things around. We would eventually turn things around, but we hadn't yet turned things around. We had stopped the bleeding, so that was good, but things weren't yet trending up. And the truth is, for me, I was trending downward in a really bad way, and so much so that I wanted to quit. In fact, at times, even after we stopped the bleeding and things weren't at their worst anymore, I remember driving home, the 9-mile drive from our church to my house when we lived in Arizona, thinking, okay, God, if this is what it is to follow you, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I'm clear about why you brought us out here, but I just don't know if I can do this anymore. So much so that I found myself traveling across the country to a 4-day intensive, and I met with a guy named Dr. John Walker. I tell you that because I owe the man a debt of gratitude. I spent 4 days, 2 sessions a day, meeting with this guy, unpacking my story. And something I didn't realize, he had an amazing gift to put this together, but this is something I had been wrestling with for a really long time. I lost my dad when I was 17, and since then, I had never really been a part of anything where I didn't have another leader, particularly a male leadership figure that was over me. And I was willing to risk and do whatever. In fact, people saw me as somebody who was willing to innovate and willing to risk, but always only if I had somebody else who was sort of the tip of the spear that sort of provided a covering or umbrella of covering over me. And I remember unpacking my story to Dr. Walker, and on the third day that I was there, he said, listen, I want to share something with you. Respectfully, I don't think this is about you being tired. I don't think this is about the struggle. I don't think this is about wishing you were back home. He said, I think you're wondering whether you have what it takes or not. He said, is it possible that maybe what's really going on is not that you're tired and not that the battle's been hard and not that you're not sure you want to go on. It's you're not sure if you can actually complete the task and turn things around. And I remember as soon as he said that, there was something inside of me that just gripped me with fear. I knew that was exactly it. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if I could complete what I felt like God had led me there to do. And we stopped the bleeding. I thought, this is a safe place to get out. I couldn't verbalize that. I didn't know how to verbalize that on the inside. And then the words he said next to me, he said, listen, I just want you to know I listened to your story. I know you don't have any reason to lie to me about what's happened and what's gone on. He said, over the past year and a half, I'll tell you what I see. I see a warrior in you. Now that may seem strange to you, but I needed that. He said, and I see a warrior that can lead people into battle. And I don't have any question about whether you have what it takes or not. The question is, do you believe that? And here's what happened that day when he got me to admit what I was really fearful of, is he did what's necessary when it comes to our fears. You have to root it out. You have to root out what's really making you afraid. I mean, what are you really afraid of? Because it'll paralyze your will. I was wanting to quit just like the people who were building the wall because of a fear I was gripped by. What's the thing beneath the thing? For some of you, you have a fear that's gripping you and it's going to keep you from ultimately what God has for you. The truth is some of you are experiencing distraction in your life. You're not thriving in life and you're not sure why. And there's things that are distracting you and leading you in the wrong direction. I just want you to know, as you're in the pursuit of this great work or the things that God's placed in front of you, the truth is these distractions have taken you off course, and maybe they've stalled you out, or maybe they're close to taking you out. And maybe these 3 questions could help you locate why or where you're losing traction. So I just want to ask you as we close today, what's clouding your view? Who's clouding your view? What are the things that are in your way? The things that keep popping up over and over and over that you need to clear out? You have to be willing to dismiss whatever is distracting you from the problem you are uniquely designed to solve, from the great work that's been placed in your hands. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't make those people bad people, doesn't make those things bad things. They're just not the best things for you. They're not going to lead you to thrive in your life. And they need to be cleared out. What's threatening your vision? What's the fire, however small it might be? Look, sometimes it's vital to press pause and deal with the things that would put your ultimate goal, your ultimate desire, your ultimate hope at risk. What's possible if this fire continues will become impossible if you're not careful. So what are they? Because you need to put them out. You need to pause. It's worth stopping the work for a minute for those things. Because if not, the work is all for naught. And then last, what's paralyzing your will? What's the thing that's making you want to quit? Whatever it is. What's making you want to quit serving them? What's making you want to quit leading them? What's making you want to quit upholding your commitment to what you really believe is what you were designed and created to do? See, bringing your fears, like for me, bringing your fears into the light, it significantly reduces the power and restores your passion for what could be and what should be. That's what happened for me. I left there, I felt like I left with a 1,000-pound backpack just dropped off my back, ready and renewed and restored to continue the great work that God had for me. Look, just if you hear nothing else, as we finish up today, listen, I want you to renew your mind for a second. This is what's true of you. You are God's handiwork. He has created great work for you to do. And he's prepared you in advance. Before you were even born into this world, he prepared the work in advance for you to do. He prepared you to do that great work. So, may you stay on course. May you understand the great work God has for you and shine a bright light, illuminating the way for others, illuminating the way for others to pursue great work in their own lives, whether it's at home or at work or across our city. Some of you, maybe somewhere else in the world, as God's opening your eyes to the vision he has for you in your life. And may your light shine so bright that people all around you, this is in the scriptures, that people all around you would see the great work that you're up to, the great work that God has for you, the great work that God has given and prepared you uniquely to do. And may they be drawn toward your Creator and your Sustainer and the one who ultimately invites you to call him Father in heaven. May it be so. Let me pray for you. God, I pray for somebody who's here and there's a fog or there's a fire or there's a fear that's gotten them off course. It's distracted them. They've lost traction. They're not moving forward. And they've stalled out and they've been tempted to give up. They've been tempted to settle. I'm sure there's somebody in this room or in some other room or watching online or maybe in their car and right now in their heart, they want to dare greatly. They want to continue to fight for, or maybe there's something you've birthed in their heart that is a terrifying longing that for a long time now they've wanted to pursue. God, I pray you'd clear out the fog that's in their way. I pray you'd help them put out the fires that would keep them from accomplishing that great work. And then I pray ultimately that you would remove and you'd root out the fear that might be paralyzing them from taking the next right step in that direction. And that you would lead the way, that they would remember the Lord. They would remember you and your power to provide and sustain, to lead and to guide. And I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Yeah. Friends, thanks so much for